the idea of having, a philosophy or, an executive playbook, right? And so this is somewhat unique in the executive interviews where, and again, it's just come up in a couple of conversations that I've had. It's not formally in sort of the roadmap and the video, so this is something I think I will add. But this idea of at the executive level, you want to have a playbook, right? As opposed to, so if I say, so we're having a tough time with this marketing problem, or we're having a tough time getting software out the door, we're having a tough time with this. What would you do in this situation, right? And having a sort of playbook or standard way that you do that, which is not, well, what I do is I go talk to everybody, I figure out where the root cause is, and then we address that problem first, and we go from there. Like, that's a very generic answer and doesn't really tell me about how you think, right? And so as an executive, the expectation is that you have done this before in some context. Like, that's just kind of the overarching theme. Is the reason I'm hiring you is because you have skills, you have done this. So what is your playbook? As a simple example of, okay, we are having trouble delivering software on time. Okay. One version of the answer is, well, I believe it all starts with talent. So whenever I get to a new organization, whenever I get to a new team, the first thing I do is I do a deep talent review. I understand what the people's skills are, what their roles are they in the right grade? Is the organization structure right? Because if we don't get that right, honestly, the rest of it doesn't matter. So that's where I go first, and I do X, Y, and Z, right? Or another good answer to that question is, I always start with the clients, right? So before I do anything, I want to understand, what are we trying to solve here? So I go to the clients, I talk to them, I talk to whoever they're talking to, and I try to do the root cause of, okay, do we actually understand what we're trying to do? Because if we understand that, this whole thing's not going to work, right? Both good answers, I think, but very, very different, right? But the point is, I clearly have a philosophy, whether I'm kind of a team first person or a client first person, or I could be a process first person, or I can be a quality first person, or I could be whatever, right? But I have a way that I go about it. I have a playbook, right? Okay, there's a crisis, a huge production outage. We had this thing go off. Like, clients are calling the CEO. What do you do? Again, you don't want to sort of recite the standard process. Well, we have an escalation procedure, and I'm sure we're capturing the tickets, and I'm going to describe the system. No, what you want to do is describe your executive philosophy for, what do you do? Do you call the CEO first? Okay. Do you just go straight there? Do you call the clients yourself? Do you start the technical investigation? Like, what do you do? What's your specific plan? And this is the executive playbook, right? This idea of, you want to have a way you approach it that shows how you are different, right? And this goes back to my first point, which is the executive value propositions are by definition unique because if it is at the executive level, it has a built-in philosophy, right? And there is no right answer to the philosophy. There are a lot of good ones, right? And what you need to figure out is, what is yours, right? And you need to believe it's a good one, and you need to be able to defend it. But you want to have a philosophy. So that's just a thing that comes up more so in the executive interviews, is this, I'm testing, do you have a playbook? So if I bring you in and say, okay, we want to be a design first organization, and you have some design background, right? We want to be a design first organization. What would you do, right? And making sure you have an answer to that question such that, okay, we want to move to the cloud. What would you do? What's your playbook, right? So think of it that way again. For the executive interviews, for the executive value proposition, you start to develop a philosophy that is, again, it's not good or bad. It is your philosophy, and it's just different than others. And there are multiple answers that work.